This is Inside Out, which is our webinar series. However, we are having a very big, very exciting in-person event in San Francisco on April 11. If you are based in San Francisco or in the surrounding area, we do encourage you to grab a in-person ticket. Early bird ticket prices are still available for a limited time. And if you can't make it in person, that's totally fine. We'll live stream the whole event and it is completely free to register. So we'll drop a link in the comments. Do encourage you. We have amazing speakers from some of the most well-known companies in the world, like Uber, Twitch, Meta, Netflix. We've got a really exciting keynote speaker who's formerly CPO at Cloudflare, Jennifer Taylor. She's going to be announced very, very soon. So I'm letting you all in on that little secret right now. She's now currently the president of Played. So incredible expertise at our disposal there. And we really do encourage you to sign up and come along. We'd love to see you there. And also, I can already see a few emojis flying up, which is great. As Henry and I are having this conversation today about strategy, I would encourage you to let us know what you think using those little emojis there. So if you want to give them a test right now, just let us know that button is working. There you go. Perfect. So if you hear something you like, remember to let us know that it's there, that you liked it, and smash that like button. Okay. Let's get started. So the business world loves military terms, and I've always found this fascinating, that we don't have a list of activities. We have tactics. We don't talk about how we'll get there. No, we do logistics. It's not just a social media post. No, it's a campaign. And one of my favorites is we don't make code accessible. We deploy it. Of course, there's no item of military lingo we love more in the world of business than strategy. Strategy conjures images of solemn generals convening in a tent high up on a hill above a battlefield. We imagine ourselves like we're moving pieces about a chessboard, like Garry Kasparov. It does feel good to talk about strategy, which is probably why we do it so often. But for all the ink that's been spilled on the subject, it's hard to find anyone who can tell you what strategy really is. A lot of strategies I've come across are just lists of things we do, more of a plan than a strategy. And sometimes it will be a usually impossible or laughably overambitious goal, like WeWork's elevate the world's consciousness. Of course, this isn't strategy either. So what is strategy? Well, it's complicated, or at least that's what we're led to believe. Our guest today, Henry Latham, doesn't think so. Over the years, Henry has taught more than 380 aspiring and current product leaders how to demystify product strategy. And he's here today to teach us what he's learned. So Henry, welcome to Inside Out. How are you going?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me in. Always excited to sort of break this topic down. I think it is one of the most misunderstood, misused, missold, whatever you want to term it. But it is also probably the most important thing we can focus on as product managers, product directors, founders, really any product role.
Yeah, so why do we have such a love affair with strategy? The term, the idea, and why do we always complicate it?
Yeah, great question. I think first, I'll start with the definition, but I like the military example because it gets misused, but it is really important. Like, military, we don't just like get everyone to sort of like walk into a battle, right? There is some need to strategize. But let's start with simple definition. So, firstly, what is strategy? Strategy itself is a set of actions to achieve a specific goal. Now, this is super like, what the hell does that mean, right? What kind of goal? What kind of actions? And actually, what we want to talk about really is product strategy, which is when we have a product, what kind of steps, what kind of actions do we need to take? What kind of goals do we even need to take to make that product succeed? Okay, so specifically for a product, we might have a high-level product vision, which is that sort of more aspirational, which is the sort of the changing the world statement. The product strategy is really, I like to think of it as, what kind of chess pieces do we have available, and what are the moves that we need to make to win the game, essentially. We hear so many, you would have, sure, come across different books, consultants, LinkedIn posts that sort of make product strategy this really complicated thing, right? They'll say, no, we need to understand, all of the different actions over, 5-10 year window. We need to break all that down. We need to do loads of competitive analysis, et cetera, et cetera. Really, we can strip it down to a really simple definition, which is product strategy is deciding what we focus on and what we do not focus on. Okay, so example, superhuman, great email application, incredibly successful. They charge $30 a month and they outcompete Gmail for the specific market. How are they able to do that? Because they have a very clear product strategy, i.e. they have a very clear focus. Go on their website right now, superhuman.com. You're going to see a big statement that says we are the fastest email experience ever, unless they've changed it in the last 2 days, but probably not. The fastest email experience ever. So what does that do? You know, Sean, you could never even work at that company. Okay, Sean, bring you in day one. You could basically work out what we should build as a company. Ask yourself, okay, is this thing going to help us, you know, this idea you've got, is it going to help us build the fastest email experience ever? If yes, great, let's talk about it. If not, it's just not our thing, right? Not our thing, leave it for another company to do, right? That's their area of focus maybe, but we focus over here. Why is strategy, so that's, sorry, what product strategy is, and a nice simple example there.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a couple of good things, and I just want to highlight that for our audience here, where we talk about strategy as a set of actions and things that we do to achieve a certain goal. However, you know, when you brought up superhuman, you've highlighted some really key things that I want to point out, which is one, the focus. So it's not what we do, but what we don't do. How do we cut out and eliminate perfectly good options, but not the options that we want to take? So it's about prioritizing a kind of focused route to go down. And in order to pick that route, you've highlighted that, you know, you want to pick something that becomes a sort of superpower. Funny that you mentioned superhuman, but this sort of heavily differentiating aspect of your product or brand that you really want to highlight and you really want to double down on. And I think we're going to go into a bit of that today. We're going to talk a little bit about how, you know, how do we find that superpower? How do we identify what it is that differentiates our company so that we can then choose to eliminate other options and dedicate our focus in that area. So we're going to get into those details in a little bit, but I wanted to backtrack a little bit of a segue there into a early company that you started. So in Henry's book, sorry, the title is the same title as this webinar. Product strategy is simple, and in that book, you mentioned that you started a company when you were young called Backtracker. It was a great idea, and it got pretty far. Can you tell us about that and what it taught you about why strategy is important?
Yeah, sure. So I came up with, funnily enough, in Brazil, actually, back in the day, self-teaching Portuguese, traveling by myself, and sort of came up with this idea for a travel app. Zero business experience, zero product experience, but anyway, raised some money, built a team around it, and you know, we basically, I mean, I blame myself for this. Made every mistake possible, but the biggest mistake was having zero strategy. What was zero strategy? It meant, you know, we had no clear problem to solve. It was sort of like, yeah, let's sort of do a bit of everything related to helping backpackers travel. I mean, we had sort of a market, backpackers, but yeah, it's a really diverse market. Like, what do we mean by that? Do we mean first-time backpackers? Do we mean professional backpackers? Do we mean people that go, you know, once every couple of years? Age groups, whatever these might be. So no real focus in terms of like what was the actual problem and who was the real market. And the second key part of it was no differentiation. Okay, so that's a really clear part. You know, when we say focus, what do we mean by focus? Focusing on something that is differentiated means that we're looking at not just something that's different, but something that's also valuable for the target market. Right. So, you know, I could say, I think it's a great example that Peter Thiel makes. You know, we could make a film that's about like zombies and sharks and, you know, giant chameleons or whatever it is. It's going to be different, but it's going to be a crap film probably. And it's not valuable for the audience. So it's the same thinking with product. You know, we need to go, okay, well, how can we do this differently? But also how do we do it in a way that's going to be quite valuable? You know, we built basically a generic product, no unique offering, no clear market, no problem being solved, no customer focus. You know, I'm spending my time pitching to loads of investors rather than just building a really simple product for a small audience with a clear focus. And, you know, inevitably failed. We never really got traction. We got, you know, an app store feature which got us 20,000 downloads that helped us raise some money, but there was no substance to the business. And, you know, contrast that with Superhuman, right? It's just, not only is it a very clear focus in terms of what they're saying, right? They're not just, you know, it isn't just a headline on the website. And this is where, by the way, every part of sales, marketing fits together like Lego bricks to form a really consistent product. It's not just marketing talk they've got on the website. No, they're obsessed with making the fastest email experience ever. Whether that means increasing service speed, whether it means the speed of user experience, whatever it might be, there is a very clear focus, and they're able to charge $30 a month because they make a big promise to a specific audience and they obsessively deliver on that promise. So yeah, amongst many mistakes with Backtracker, the big one was really lack of strategy, lack of product strategy, and as I said, those elements that really make product strategy.
Yeah, I love that because, like you said, the headlines on Superhuman's websites and the way that they conduct their customer service, all of this, like you said, as soon as if I walked in there as a marketer or if someone else walked in there at customer service, they know exactly what they have to deliver, and the choices become so obvious. It's about this sort of elimination of complexity, which is funny because
Yeah,
we complicate strategy so much, but really it should be a decomplexity, eliminating complexity, making it manageable.
yeah, and I think there's two really key points there. So I think the first one is I call this big domino effect. Um, we'll come into the actionable stuff. By the way, I do not believe I should ever do any interaction where you don't come away with something really actionable. So we will come to that, but we need to sort of talk about why this is so important. The big domino effect is really when we have a clear product strategy in place and people are aligned. Not only does it mean we're going to build better products because we're more focused, we're going to serve a specific audience, create more value for them, and then capture more of that value in terms of revenue and ideally profit. But it makes your life, if you work in product, you've got stakeholders, it's going to make your life so much easier because if you go, say Sean, you're bossy, annoying CEO or sales lead or whoever you might be, and you're always, getting up on my grill, saying, Henry, we've got to build this thing like right now, today, tomorrow, whatever it might be. We're aligned around product strategy. It's not going to solve all of those issues, right? There's no magic pill, but it will remove 50, 60, 70% because I can go, well, Sean, like we did this big workshop, or we aligned around the fact that we're going to be focused on the fastest email experience ever. Why are you talking to me about this like calendar idea, for example? Hey, we can icebox it, like maybe we'll change strategy in future, but our product strategy at the moment is focused on speed. If your idea doesn't help us achieve that, then it's just not our thing. So immediately you remove all these extra meetings and extra conversations, and people do start self-auditing. Because if you're a really good product person, you're going to be repeating the same message, which is every single meeting, we're going to be the fastest email experience ever. We're focused on speed, right? Everything comes back to the same core message that's not high level aspirational about like make everyone's life easier, superhuman, but no, the fastest email experience ever. It's specific enough to give us guidance and give us direction there. And I think that the big domino effect again makes your life easier, helps you build better product. I think the second thing is to say, product strategy, there are stages to product strategy, right? So when I say focus, let's break that down a little bit. So I always think of this as like capturing and holding a castle, right? The castle's our market, right? The market, everyone's trading, spending money in there, and we're taking a little bit of our tax, like a sort of a feudal king. So step one is we need to enter the castle, right? That's where we come up with this unique product strategy, right? The way to go, okay, how do we get into that market? There might be a one dominant player, it might be, 5, 6, 7 different players there. Come up with something unique and valuable, we start gaining market share. Step two is then basically, okay, we found a way in, let's double down on that. This is the big mistake people make is they go, okay, we make this nice product strategy statement. We put it on our marketing pages or on a PowerPoint somewhere, share it with investors. You need to then deliver on that thing, right? You need to then go and deliver. Like Superhuman doesn't go, hey, we're the fastest email experience ever, and then go and build all these other like calendar or to-do list or whatever it might be. No, they double down because that's what the market wants and they get really, really good at it. So then they start basically establishing themselves in the castle, taking over the castle, stage two. Stage three, there's complexity then. We go, okay, well, how do we defend our market share? That might need to clever things like leveraging network effects. How might we use data in clever ways, artificial intelligence? So there is complexity further down the line. But like with everything, like what's the point of worrying about that stuff if we aren't able to even capture part of the castle, right? And this is true for new products, obviously, in that example, but it's very true for existing products. If you're losing market share, it's probably not going to help you to go, we need to add like more customer personas or build more features. It's going to come back most likely to saying we just probably need to cut actually out 80% of what we're doing and just double down on the area of focus that we think is really important.
All right. Well, let's forge some siege weapons and get the cavalry ready because we're going to storm the castle. What's we so we've covered sort of like a very broad idea of like how to think about strategy. First steps, I think, what I've heard from you is there's a lot of defining of things. We've got to understand like what is it? How do we come to the idea of what is the value of the product? How do we think about the problems that we're going to solve, and how do we think about the target markets that we want to solve a problem for? Do you want to get into a little bit of definitions for us?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with problem. So there's really three key elements we need to think about when it comes to product strategy. And we use a framework called the MVO, but we'll link through the book and there are lots of Miro templates. I think we're the most voted. The Prod MBA templates on Miro, I think, are the most voted, so we can use some of those as well. Sorry, let me have a bit of water first.
Also, Henry, would this be your first step when you if I say, Henry, like I need help with strategy, would this be your first step? Would be sitting down and talking about how do we define
Well,
the
I would say
problem?
if you said to me, I need help with my product, whether you're starting your own business or director of product at a huge company, this is the conversation I would have. Yeah, is what's your product strategy, essentially? So three elements to it. We've got problem, we've got target market, and then we've got unique way. Sorry, four elements of it. We've got problem we solve, target market, desired outcome, and then unique way that we're going to deliver value. So let's start with the problem. We always need to start by saying, okay, what is the problem we're solving? Very cliche, but very important. And when we have a problem, we don't say like businesses don't have problems, right? Corporations don't have problems. People have problems. We need to be very specific about the who. So let's start. I'll go through an example. Right? So let's start with problem. Right? Problem is very misunderstood, by the way, and is usually the first place that we fall. We start going in the wrong direction or misidentifying the right strategic direction. So when we think about the problem, we usually think about a surface level problem. So a good example is one of my students who I was coaching last week. She was looking at a problem of target market being tech people in something we can relate to today, in fact. Tech people in their sort of 30s, maybe 40s, they've suddenly got a decent amount of disposable income, right? They're starting to build up savings. And what was the surface level problem? Surface level problem is how to spend my savings, right? How to spend my disposable income. Now, it'd be really easy for us to go, okay, well, that's the problem. So let's go build like some sort of spending tracker or like banking app or something like that. But we'd be completely missing the problem, the real problem in that case. Because when she went and actually did the discovery calls, right, went to actually go and speak to these people, tech people, 30s, 40s, what was the problem? The problem was about their relationship with money, right? They felt really insecure about spending money. They didn't feel like they'd earned it in a way. They didn't feel, they felt guilt. They still went to restaurants and would be looking at the menu and looking at all the prices, worried about what they're spending, despite the fact that they were saving, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, right? So no big deal if they're spending $100 in a meal versus 10. So the real problem, that what we call the internal problem, in fact, was this sort of psychology and relationship with money and all of these sort of like, how they grew up. If, I was someone that never went out to dinner, right? So it took me a while took me really last 5-10 years to be like comfortable, not always checking the prices on a menu. So as an example, we could have gone off and solved that sort of more rational surface level problem. And in fact, the real problem is this internal problem, which is the psychology of money. So big mistake people make is misidentifying the problem, not going deep enough, and then really building something that nobody's going to use. Because, for example, you could say, I was in her niche, so you could give me a great, nice, logical looking, rational app that helps me maybe find cool stuff to spend my money on. Not going to solve the problem because I'm still going to go to a nice restaurant and worry about the price. Right. So instead, by really identifying the problem, we can go in a very different direction and sort of rethink things effectively. So a good example of this is an app called Amy, AMIE.so. Amy looked at the market for sort of the calendar market, let's say, and basically said, okay, what's the problem? It is not how to use your calendar more effectively. Why? Because what happens really? Why are we using calendars? It's so we can use our time more effectively and therefore have a better quality of life. Now, calendars don't make that happen because what happens? Sean, I'm sure your boss books time with you, marketing team books time with you, right? Whoever books time with you, and end up taking your time, and you end up not using your time as effectively or proactively as you would like. So they basically said, okay, what's the real problem? It's how do we use our time effectively to live our best version of our lives? So rather than just building a calendar, we need to rethink that. And I'll come on to break down the third and fourth part of strategy. We need to rethink that and say, well, let's actually define a whole new category that really solves this problem. So Amy went, okay, who's our target market? It's going to be, busy tech workers like product managers, right? Busy people, usually in quite a lot of meetings. So we've got our, let's say, product manager. What's the problem they're solving? Really, it's about how to, not able to use their time effectively. Third part, desired outcome, right? That's really like, what is the ultimate goal this person wants, right? We sort of flip the problem there and say, okay, well, let's say, Sean, let's say you're your target user. Well, Sean doesn't want to be in more meetings or like make his calendar more available for his boss, right? No, Sean wants to live the best version of his life, right? He wants to be able to do his hobbies, see his friends, carve out time for, writing content, starting a side hustle, whatever it might be, as well as obviously, doing his day-to-day work. So we identify the desired outcome, and suddenly that opens up our horizons, right? Because we're not zeroing in on we're building another calendar app. We're really opening up and saying, okay, if we understand what Sean really wants by flipping this problem of not using time well to using time really effectively to live a fulfilled life, then we can start thinking a little bit differently. And then last element, number 4, is how do we then deliver value in a unique way? That's that sort of area of focus. In that case, they said, well, it doesn't make sense just to have a calendar. Instead, what we should do is merge the concept of a personal to-do list. That personal to-do list should then map onto your calendar so that if you want to walk the dog today, that's blocking out half an hour or an hour. If you're going to have lunch with a friend, that's blocked out. It's not an open calendar that's only filled with your work meetings. And they're another great example. Small company, started out, just come out of beta and really growing quite effectively because they're really focused in terms of who they're helping, what that person ultimately wants, desired outcome, and finally how they deliver in a very unique way. And we call that framework the minimal viable offer, right? An MVO, which is essentially saying, who do we help? What's the ultimate outcome? How do we deliver in a unique way? And we package it into a really nice, succinct statement. So ours at Product MBA, for example, is we fast track product managers to head of product by getting you to build a real product on an 8-week bootcamp. If we're superhuman, we help busy tech CEOs save 2 hours a day with our lightning fast email application. So it really is that simple, right? We take the person, the problem, flip the problem to design outcome, and then add how do we deliver in a unique way. And that gives us that focus without getting into all those mistakes that I've talked about of overcomplicating it, trying to define a million different actions, trying to think of these 3 stages in too much detail, rather than just focusing, getting market share, and then obsessing over delivering for that target market.
Let's talk a little bit about research because obviously when I think about strategy, I do think about research of some description. I need to diagnose the problem. I need to understand more. Now, a lot of people do sort of go towards competitor research. Obviously, strategy is a competitive game, but you sort of take a slightly different approach. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is why I will very happily plug Dovetail, by the way, because I do recommend it to our students. So what is the big mistake we make and this is, the classic mistake with MBAs and consultants, right? They will go, let's get everyone in a room and sit on a Excel sheet, put some nice graphs together, and they'll do some competitive analysis, right? See what are our competitors doing quite well. Now that's got to, we have to do that. That there's a lot of value in that. We do not do it first. Why? Because it blinds us to the kind of unique or different sort of first principle ways of challenging the normal way of doing stuff. If we start with competitive analysis, we're going to end up building just another calendar app. If we're, that Amy example, right? Just a sort of another generic one, pretty much the same features, maybe doing something like slightly different, right? But it's artificial. We might go, let's do this, but gamify it. It's like, what the hell does that mean? So what we want to do instead is start with proper product discovery. What does that mean? It means really simply, we go and speak to the person that we think is our target market. Now, that's the same thing, whether you're launching a new product, it is the same thing, whether you're launching an existing product. Don't wait for an excuse like, sorry, for your boss to give you, just go speak to 5 people from your target market, ideally 10, but start with 5, and quite simply ask them about the problem, right? Again, we've got a script that I'll share in the book. Really, really simple. It's like, what challenges do you face related to the problem? What's the ideal outcome you're looking for? How have you tried to solve it in different ways? These sort of, not pretty standard questions you get in the mum test book, or you'd find on any recommendations online. Now, the key is practice and getting good at really uncovering the gold there. But anyway, product discovery is a whole other topic. So I saw a question. The book is called Product Strategy is Simple. You'll find it on Amazon. So we go speak to people really simply and ask them about the problem and try to dig in a bit and see what is going on here. Like, is it a real problem? Is it an acute problem? If it's a new product, is this even worth our time trying to solve? Like, is it a painkiller or a nice to have? If not, it's not worth our time. And when we do that, we have a simple Miro template we use, but also we suggest something like Dovetail, where essentially the key thing is not, me and Sean sitting there writing pages and pages of notes because, hey, we're never going to look at those again, are we? Or, we send them to our boss. They're like, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to read that. We need to quite simply aggregate that conversation, right? Whether it's 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, if really acute problem, someone will happily chat to you for 60 minutes. We aggregate that down and simply say, what are the key trends that we've seen there, right? Dovetail's tagging with keywords. We can do it manually as well. Like, what are the sort of key couple of bullet points per question, for example? And then we need to aggregate that and say, okay, so of these themes, like, how many times did it come up? Are there commonalities, different quotes, comments, maybe observations we made that fit within a certain bucket? So, when I launched Prod MBA, I've done this as a solo founder business for 4 years, completely bootstrapped. We saw common themes like, okay, big frustration. Product managers are trying to skill up, but books and courses are too theoretical. They lack mentorship. So what do we simply do? You then flip those and say, okay, well, if everyone's saying that books and courses are too theoretical, what if we make this the most hands-on thing ever and get you to just build a real product on a boot camp, for example? So when we identify problems from first principles, again, not worrying about the competition, just saying, like, what is going on in this problem space? What are the people talking about? And then we try and flip those problems and see, well, what could that look like as an opportunity, or as a sort of a positive a value add to them? Then it starts giving us a lot of ideas around what we could then include, what's that sort of unique element that we're looking for there. So it really is that simple. Like, and you can do that. Honestly, you can do that within 2 days, easily a week, right? It's going to take you an hour to get on LinkedIn and find, product managers 1 to 2 years experience, as I did when I started out. Reach out to 50 of them. You're going to get maybe 10 calls booked in, 5 actually show up. By the end of the week, you've got a really good level of first principle knowledge about the market that you can then give you a lot of confidence moving forward into saying, okay, well, what are we going to do as our product strategy next step?
So we actually, if you want to follow Henry's discovery methods, and as Henry mentioned, you can use Dovetail, but you don't have to either. You can actually do this manually if you want. But
I think that's the key. Yeah, it will save you time. I think the key point for me is, like, I don't care about tools. Just go and do that. Like, follow the principle. Speak to people. Right? Yeah, Dovetail makes your life easier. Anyway, it's going to aggregate it. Great. But just go and speak to people. Don't dodge the hard work, because it's a hell of a lot easier. Again, sitting in a room and you'll feel sort of busy and creative. We've got our post-it notes, all that jazz. Just go speak to people. That is the thing you need to do. as step
Yeah.
one.
And this, I think
Sorry,
that's the
interrupted.
important thing. Oh, no, that's fine. I think that's the important thing to identify, that the cornerstone of any good strategy really is going out and talking to your customers. Because we talk about focus areas, we talk about how do we think about problems, we talk about target markets. None of this is possible unless you've actually done the work of talking to real people and real customers. And I feel like this kind of dovetails, unintended, nicely into a question that I wanted to ask about. I do hear a lot of product managers talk about how they work in feature factories. They're not doing any real product strategy. And I think, you can't really call yourself a product manager unless you are invested somewhat in strategy. Otherwise, you're really just a delivery. Well, not just a delivery manager, but because I feel like, there's obvious importance to a role of project managing delivery and ensuring things like the trains are running on time. But I know that a lot of product managers are frustrated because they didn't sign up to do project management. They signed up to do product management, and they want to be more involved in strategy. And I feel like the freedom away from, if you really want to liberate yourself and really get stuck into product management, you need to talk to customers, and that's really the first step. And
And I think that's, that raises, I think, perhaps the most important point today, Sean, which is many product managers will go, well, it's not my job, right? It's the job of product director, CPO, whatever, founder to bring in product strategy. Reality is, I've probably interviewed like honestly, 1,000 product managers in the last 4 years. 90% of those I speak to are not working in product-led companies. Now, obviously, there's a bias there because the ones that are product-led companies don't really need to go and get external training. But that seems to be about right. Like 80 to 90% of companies are not very product-led, i.e., you're doing some form of project management with a bit of discovery thrown in here and there. And 90% of companies do not have a product strategy, right? What does that come down to? Usually it's because most management leadership has no freaking clue what it is, or they've bought into the Kool-Aid that product strategy is really complex and just sort of like, let's bury our head in the sand. Or they go, what, it's just such a big effort to even try and change my company to be more product-led. I'm just not going to do it, right? Or I don't know how, not willing, whatever it might be. Now, I don't care what your role is, what your company size, there is room for you to move the conversation on this. Now, there is no guarantee that I get, Sean, product manager at 1,000-person car, a massive bank like HSBC. The company's not going to magically transform, even if you get a really good, CEO coming in to really whip it into shape. So, you as a product, you're not going to shift the whole organization. But whatever your role, you can come in with the MBO framework. You can follow the workshop, and they'll be linked through in the book. And I can share a direct link to a nice mirror template we've got, Sean, after. Run something called Product Strategy Decider, where you basically get your people to go through key stakeholders to define, like, who do we want to focus on? What does that outcome do we think they really want? And how do we think we're going to deliver in a unique way? 30, 60 minutes, really, really simple. You don't even need to follow the workshop framework. Just have a little, ideation session around that. And just by coming out with, a couple of MBO statements, like saying, where might we focus? That starts moving the conversation because, again, we get a bit of self-auditing. So, the next time Sean comes to me bugging me about all these nice ideas that he's got from his sales calls, I can just go, oh, we talked about this area of focus in the workshop. So, you can push back and you've got a nice artifact to push back. And obviously, the more we start focusing, the more results we get as well. So it becomes a nice sort of vicious, what's the word? The opposite of a vicious cycle. A nice snowballing effect.
A virtuous cycle.
Virtuous cycle. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. It's a snowball effect, essentially, right? Where we start seeing results. Maybe we should focus on this. But we're still going to get maybe pushy CEO coming in saying, I don't care, we're building this thing because we need it to raise our next round of investment, whatever it might be. That can happen, but they can't ignore the fact that we've agreed on this area of focus, right? So start shifting conversation. Again, it's not going to magically change it, but you can do that. I've coached, again, nearly 400 people on this framework. Product manager presents it to the product director. Product director gets educated on this topic and suddenly goes, actually, this is pretty interesting. You basically support the product director to organize this workshop, introduce this framework, whatever it might be, to start again moving the conversation. So it is it really is a bullshit excuse to say, put your hands up and say, well, it's not my job, not my responsibility. Like if you want to work in a more product-led organization, if you want to do more meaningful product work, this is the thing to do, right? This bringing in nice, clear product strategy represented by that MBO statement, usually done through a workshop. That's what's going to really shift the needle for you.
Couldn't agree more. So you hear that, folks at home, pin down your leaders and force them to clarify. Really, really push people in your organization, especially in leadership, to reduce the direction that the company is going down and the product that you are building to something that is clear, something that feels like a direction that differentiates and highlights the value of the product you're building. Because if you can get that at least sort of momentum and thinking going, then you're on the right path to doubling down. Henry, let's get stuck into some questions. We've got some questions coming from the audience over here. I have one from Amanda. Okay, so the first question is, what was the workshop framework that you mentioned, Henry? I believe we'll be sharing it afterwards as well.
Yeah, it's called the product strategy decider. By the way, if anyone is serious about putting product strategy into practice, do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll respond to every single one of you. Send through resources, tips, tactics, give me a bit of context around like size of organization, challenges, these kind of things. Reach out and I will help you put this into practice. I really believe everything's a waste of time unless it is put into practice. So very happy to help there. Yeah, product strategy decider is essentially a 60-minute workshop where we define these steps. Right, so we define, okay, who's the target market specifically? We vote on align around who that might be. We then go into defining, okay, what are all the kind of problems they face? We vote on those, say, okay, which are the most important and acute that we want to solve. We then flip that to opportunities, and then we package all of that into some MBO statements. Best thing to do, I'm going to link through to the template for that, and it's got all basically everything you need to get started on there. Okay, so and it's very highly rated on Miro, and it's really just as I said, a workshop going through the steps that we've talked about today. Again, I would recommend reading the book to give you a bit of more depth of the theory before you go and do it. You don't need to, honestly. You can just get started with that template.
Next question I've got is from Andrea. Do you think that product strategy approach differs in SaaS versus non-SaaS? And if so, then what advice do you have for people trying to navigate product in a non-SaaS environment? Good question, Andrea. Henry?
Great question. So I mean, let's take B2B generally. If we're dealing with businesses, we usually have different types of user, right? So let's say we sell some sort of HR tool, right? We're going to be dealing probably with like a head of HR that we sell to. And then we might have, let's say the users freelancers, right? It's a tool that HR use to manage their freelancers. Those needs are not only different, right? What is the head of HR? They want like transparency over pay, speed of payment, reliable, trustworthy freelancers, whatever it is. That's really different to the freelancer. The freelancer just wants like paid work probably, or wants to be paid on time, right? So in that kind of situation, in terms of our product strategy, we basically need to say, well, okay, who do we, that's where we might have two stages. We might say, okay, well, we're going to be pitching to the head of HR because ultimately they're the ones paying for it, even if the junior HR whatever is the user, or the junior HR people plus freelancers, right? So we might pitch to them. But we still need to think about the end user. Right? We still need to build this thing for them so that they're actually getting value from it. And then it's really just quite simply thinking about, do these two things align? Like, can we make sure that we're delivering value to one target market as well as the other piece of the puzzle here? So that's the difference with B2B. When it's B2C, it's much easier, right? We have one specific persona we focus on. I think another related point there, Sean, is we're also talking about companies that have 10 different personas, right? Mature products. In those cases, almost always, unless you've got very strong product market fit, you're really growing it up organically very quickly, you're very profitable. Almost always, you need to make a tough decision and say, look, we need to refocus around like one, maybe two personas. So in that case, yeah, if you've got resources, if you've got like 2, 3, 4, 5 product teams, you might do an MVO focused on product managers over here. You might have designers as another target market. That's fine as well, but we separate them, right? We don't sort of mush everyone together, because then we end up trying to build everything for everyone and we please no one.
Great. Thank you very much. I've got a couple more questions, but just before I jump into that, I want to do one more quick shout out for our big event this April in person. You can attend in San Francisco and see us live, or you can jump on online for free. Early bird tickets are available for our in-person experience, and like I said, the online experience is completely free. There'll be speakers from Uber, Meta, Netflix, former CPO of Cloudflare has just been signed up to headline. It's gonna be an incredible day, so I highly recommend it. Otherwise, as well, if you like events like this and you want to stay in the loop, I strongly encourage you to sign up to the Outlier newsletter, where we share a lot of great content, including content that Henry's written. You can also check out an article that Henry recently published about discovery. So we did cover a little bit about like Henry's tips on discovery, how to simplify that, how to really strip it down to bare bones and really do it fast and do it effectively. And I really encourage you, there's links also to the Miro templates in there as well. So I encourage you to check that out and subscribe to the newsletter. Next question we've got here from Anonymous. I like this question, actually. Are there any mental exercises or drills, practices that can help us improve our strategy muscles?
Yeah, great question. Because I would also make the point, as I was saying, like we need to do product discovery and speak to people. If you've got lots of repetitions, your ideas start to get stronger, right? You start to understand quite effectively, okay, what I love with students is I want them to be able to walk down the street and they see an advert, right, a poster. Immediately they go, who are they targeting? What's the unique value proposition? Why did they make those kind of decisions? So that's one tip is, read the book, read the article, just basically reinforce the learning we've covered today, and then start to just apply this out in the real world when you're observing things or looking at a new website, downloading a new app. Start to go, again, market. What's the market? What's the desired outcome they're promising? How are they solving it in a unique way? That's one thing. And I think the second thing is I always say, start a little side project. I made money before building anything with the MVO. Probably made I had a rough idea. I literally had 6 bullet points of what I was going to cover in this bootcamp, and I simply pitched an MVO statement on the landing page, did a sales call, got deposit paid, and I was like, okay, great. Well, I think there's a business here. So you can go and do that. You don't need to sort of make it a scary thing and say, oh my god, we need to make money day one. But you can test ideas out, reach out to friends with an MVO statement or people in your network and see, does it resonate? If so, why? If so, maybe why not, for example. So I think it's just, as with everything, get repetitions, whether, again, that's repetition through observation, looking at a landing page, a poster, whatever it might be, or just testing out your own ideas is really the best. You need to own the thinking behind the product strategy for it to be effective. It's not good enough to say, Sean comes in, parachutes in, CPO goes, here's the product strategy. That's not how you're going to really learn effectively, right? Because you're not having to make those tough strategic decisions, which again it's not even the framework, it's psychologically difficult. Psychologically difficult because we're told all the time it's safer to sort of try and do a bit of everything, and it's the opposite. But it's scary to say we're going to focus on one thing and sort of ignore the 9 other things. So again, that's where you got to go put this into practice in the real world to go through that sort of psychological journey.
I love that. I love the idea of looking at landing pages and looking at advertising and looking at general marketing around a product and trying to figure out what do you think is the thing that they're doubling down on? What are they focusing on? What have they realized? What insight are they basing this off? What have they realized about their target market? So from Johnny, I've got a question. I think this is a great question, actually. What role does a North Star play in product strategy decider? Henry?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways to interpret North Star. So if we talk generally, North Star is sort of giving us direction, right, as a concept. But North Star metrics specifically would be what is if we could only choose one metric, what might that be? So let's say for Instagram, it might be minutes of videos, or YouTube, like minutes of video viewed per day, for example. Because if we do that, that drives ad revenue, it drives usage, happy customers, etc. So that's a sort of North Star framework. Yeah, absolutely. Like we need to measure product strategy. We can't just go, oh, we're going to be the fastest email experience ever. And then like, well, how fast is it? Right. We need to be able to back that up by measuring, are we in fact making this a faster email experience? Whether that means, tracking email load times to NPS or, some sort of qualitative feedback, or actually sitting down with like a user after a month and timing them and saying, okay, well, how long is email taking for you now? For example, or do a specific task, time it, how long did it take you? So absolutely, yeah, it's, as with everything, we want to measure, but also we need to be careful about what we measure because we're always going to optimize for that metric. So we want to get it right.
Awesome. And I realize, folks, that we're over time, but I'm going to keep running with the questions because there are a couple of good questions here. So hang in tight. If you're still with us, we're gonna finish all the questions before we sign off today. So we've got another question from Anonymous. It's about UX research, one of the subjects that's very close to home here. What are some tactics that researchers can do to contribute to or steer product strategy in a large organization? Coming from an organization that has historically made product strategy very complex. Great question from Anonymous there.
Yeah, I mean, good question. Look, I've never worked as a UX researcher, so I can't look at it from that perspective. But I think there are general principles to follow, which is do not give fluffy. I mean, this is what the article was about, wasn't it, Sean, last month? Fluffy product discovery. Fluffy product discovery is going, hey, here's all these notes from these conversations I have. No one wants to read them. No one cares, and you're not talking about the value. You are not being customer centric. Your customer being your stakeholders in that case. So what do you need to do? You need to basically come in and go, okay, not only have I gone and spoken to these 10 users, but I've also validated that they're willing to sign up to this minimal viable offer statement, which represents the product strategy I think we should focus on. There seems to be some value here. If we converted X amount of, then start putting your sort of business hat on. If we convert sort of X amount of users, we charge them Y in terms of pricing, and we could grow that, X%, then here's what the profit might look like. So putting it in business terms and summarizing it, business terms, showing that there's real business value, that is suddenly going to get you a hell of a lot more respect than just going like, here's this exciting research we did, which is just too fluffy. And, people are too busy for that stuff. Sadly, I know it's annoying because that's your role, right? And it's valuable, but we need to just put it in really succinct, value-based terms.
I couldn't agree more. And I think from a research perspective, as we've sort of highlighted the importance of speaking to customers as a kind of cornerstone to any good product strategy. If you're in a UX research role, I feel like you can really steer the conversation towards doing, as Henry mentioned, research that is grounded in business outcomes that senior leadership stakeholders will really understand and will find highly relevant. You can steer your product team and your product managers to doing more discovery work or better discovery, maybe not necessarily more, but just more effective discovery work. And, looking into methods like Henry's and looking at perhaps more lightweight ways you can go about doing research so that you can kind of already get ahead of maybe some of the conversations like research takes too long. We want to just, rely on gut feel, or, research is good for usability, but in discovery, I'm just going to sort of pull it all out of my head. And I think you really want to encourage a research mindset at the organization. And in order to do that, you need to show that it's going to be fast, or it's going to be at least the ROI, it's going to be efficient. It's going to be effective, and it's going to bring us things that we don't already kind of know. Which means you really want to highlight that kind of business value area. So yeah, I think there's a lot that researchers can do to really help with strategy. I think research is the cornerstone of strategy. So another one from Anonymous. At what time in the process should a product designer be involved in the product strategy? Or is it one of those exclusive clubs for PMs? I love this. What a controversial question.
Great question. Honestly, I don't think it really matters who does it. It is really about the ability to influence, right? And I think, all of us have imposter syndrome and, insecurities, right? I have seen different roles do this. Usually it's the product manager because this is the thing they're thinking about most. But I've been a designer myself, right? It's frustrating if some work comes to you like this is really silly, it doesn't make any sense. And usually why product designers end up stepping into product management roles eventually, in many cases. Yeah, absolutely fine. Be involved in that conversation. I mean, whoever's driving that conversation, use knowledge. I mean, not only should we bring a product designer in, like 100% we should bring in like customer support. They're the ones that interact most with customers. Like they've got some really good ideas. Bringing the customer in through discovery calls really important, and obviously bringing senior stakeholders in so that we don't have that thing of like, hey, here's suddenly a product strategy, and then product director goes, well, like, why haven't I heard about this? So bringing them along for the ride doesn't necessarily, having everyone in every conversation, but yeah, if you can get two people in a discovery call, great. But honestly, my general point is, I don't care who's doing it, as long as someone's doing it, and don't let yourself make excuses by saying, oh, I need another person on the call. You can do it yourself. You can take notes or use Dovetail, something like that, or just record it, right? Just move the conversation, because if not, no one's going to do it. Right? Most leadership do not have this training, particularly if you're outside of San Francisco. Don't have the training, don't have the will, and they want a really simple, effective framework like the MBO, and they don't really care where that comes from, as long as it's helping move the conversation forward. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I think this is the year that we sort of, in general, I think we're moving away from this kind of really siloed thinking about,
It's awesome.
yeah, who does what, where, like, oh, I'm a designer, I have to wait for, the specs to be passed on to me, or, the product managers are going to do strategy and I'm going to deliver and execute on that. And I feel, it should be a product team thing. And however you define that product team, maybe it goes as far as support and even sales and marketing. And I think all these people need to be involved in some way, but I really do think that,
I think also, but as you said, particularly this, companies are making redundancies. So even if you're a great designer, like if your team is not adding value, you might be out of a job, right? So you need to start shifting that conversation, because if your product is not focused, it's not going to succeed. It's going to at some point fold, be shut down, whatever it might be. So again, really take concept of extreme ownership, right? Take extreme ownership. Drive this conversation forward, whatever your job title, because it's in the interest of you, it's in the interest of your team, right? Your friends, your colleagues, and it's in the interest of the users that have a problem that they need solved, right? So, really try and move that conversation forward.
Okay, Henry, I think last question we'll go through today, another one from Anonymous. For researchers without the best or deepest understanding of the product cycle or the product life cycle, what are some of the best places to start? So let's just say you've entered a project in the middle and don't have time to get an understanding of prior to testing. So I think the question here is, how should researchers get an understanding of the product development life cycle if they've just entered in the middle of the project?
Is that specifically about their own learning, or generally trying to get context really quickly?
I feel like it's about getting context really quickly.
Getting context quickly. Okay, great.
Yeah, like you've
Yeah,
been dropped.
best thing to do is go back to the raw product discovery, right? So obviously you're not going to watch every single interview, but there should be notes somewhere, right? Again, someone should have shared aggregated notes. So start getting a sense of that. What's the historical context there? Interview, really good one as well, is interview team members, right? And ask them, like, from your perspective, you can use the product strategic roadmap template even. Product strategy decider template. It's another workshop. And basically go through it. So like, how would you define the target market? How would you define the problems they face? How would you define the desired outcome? What kind of unique way do you think we solve it? And get a sense from them of, maybe there's complete misalignment. Maybe there is alignment and it's just more of a wording issue. But that might give you a sense of sort of direct, why we've made these kind of decisions. And again, that's the big domino. If you have that strategic understanding, you can start, you're basically empowered to then, you have guardrails and a direction that you can start going in there.
Couldn't agree more. Just to echo that point, if you are dropped into the middle of a project and you want to get really quick context, or perhaps you've started a new company and you want to understand why decisions have been made, first stop would be, check out, if you use Dovetail, you can go and check out some of the interviews that were done during discovery. You can find like the relevant highlights or maybe highlight reels so that you can really quickly get up to speed about what was sort of discussed in those customer calls. So that will give you a lot of the customer context, and could not agree more with Henry's point of interviewing your own stakeholders. You are a researcher after all. Apply those same skills to your internal stakeholders. Go around and ask them a set of questions and do your own internal research project. Report back to them. If you've just started a job, you can go talk to all the relevant stakeholders, get that information, put it into Dovetail, and then deliver a report and tell them, here's what I've actually learned. And you might actually find that there's some incongruencies or some inconsistencies or some needless complexities that you can help sort out in their strategy. You can say, hey, like, I've actually got different messages from everybody. It doesn't seem like we're actually aligned over what our massive point of differentiation there is. I think we might be lacking focus. What a great way to start a new role. Well, depends on where you're working. Maybe some people don't like having problems exposed.
And also, Joe, final thing I will add to that, you also need to go and speak to users, right? Do not trust what your team members said. Trust it to a point, but go and do the research yourself. Do first principle thinking, right? Just go and see what is going on from personal observation as well.
That's right. As they said in Soviet Russia, trust, but verify.
Yeah.
So that's all we have time for today. Henry, first of all, can we give a round of applause, a digital virtual round of applause for Henry? Thank you very much for joining us today. Really, really illuminating. We've shared a bunch of links with you that you can go chase up so you can learn more about Henry's approach to strategy, how he simplifies it. I really do recommend the book. I've read it myself and it is incredibly effective, very, very simple, very easy to follow. And it just gives you a step-by-step sort of process. It isn't that hard to do strategy. Clear.
Could I just add on the book? This is it's been self-published, and again, run a bootstrap company, and this has crept its way to the top of the category of product strategy. I think precisely because it's simple and it's actionable, and gets to all of that fluff and mess that we find in other product strategy thought leaders.
Yeah, we'll have links to the book. You can check out Henry's articles on Outlier. You can also reach out to Henry. Henry's gratefully said he'll share some more resources with you if you have any specific questions. And thank you for being an amazing audience, everybody. Like, amazing, really, really well thought out questions, great engagement. So thank you. We will see you again soon. Hopefully the next webinar will be coming up in about a month or so. Actually, no, we have one next week. So we'll let you know more about that. And of course, register to come to our in-person event or see it online. Until then, goodbye. Thanks, everybody.